So good morning.
Okay.
I'd like to welcome you all to this morning's e-Memoir session, where today we're joined by Dr. Sally Wooton of the FETN, and allow Sally to do a little bit of a brief introduction to herself. I'm sure to the FETN very shortly. This morning we're looking at understanding the role of the personal tutor. It's the first in a series of webinars that we'll be running with Sally. We'd like to keep the sessions as interactive as possible, so feel free to use the chat facility or the question facility. Later on in the session, there'll be an opportunity if you'd like to unmute your microphone. Just let me know and I'll activate them so you'll be able to converse with Sally and indeed the participants. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sally and I will mute myself. So good morning to you all, and good morning, Sally.
Good morning, Marek. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. As Marek says, this is my first one, so if I start to rattle, please let him know and I'll slow things down a bit. I'd really like you to make this as interactive as possible, so please join in with some questions, keep things going, and we'll just take it nice and steady. There's a good mix of people and job roles I've seen here, so please make sure that you get what you need out of this session, and we'll see how it goes. So shall we make a start, Marek? Now on to the next slide. Thank you. Thanks. First thing I wanted to say was that I've been working on tutoring for a number of years now, and I'm really passionate about the impact that it has. But I think we still need to encourage some dialogue around personal tutoring and really get people talking about it, acknowledging what tutoring is, the fact that it is a skilled activity, and to just be aware that the role is increasingly more complex. It demands more of tutors, and good tutoring does make a difference, so it's worth having this conversation. Next slide, Marek, please. Okay. On to the next. Can you hear me okay? Great. So areas that we're going to consider during this little session is just having a quick look at what the personal tutor is and what that role is about. And within that, just understanding why it's important to draw boundaries around that role. And then I think if we can look at the value of tutoring so that we can start to share that with others, and then just take a brief look at how we can raise the quality of tutoring and improve the learner experience through raising those professional standards. Thank you. So what is a personal tutor? It varies across the sector, to be honest. There are different names for the role. Essentially, it is a learning alliance. It's providing that holistic support and development. That's what we're aiming to do. So whatever it's called and however we actually take that role out, we are doing the same thing. So I think just to be aware that although we talk about personal tutor, it could be a learning coach, a mentor, pastoral support tutor. There are more names emerging all the time, but essentially we're about helping the learner to develop and to achieve. Thanks, Marek. Okay. So in terms of the role itself, it will vary between organisations as to what you're actually doing within that role. Your own job descriptions, the way the policies are set out will inform that. But essentially, we're about developing that tutoring relationship with learners so that they can engage in our support. Facilitating their holistic learning and development. And this is about enabling them to develop, enabling them to develop their transferable skills and to help them in identifying needs and access to support. So it's all about supporting them to do these things. Okay, on to the next. Are we doing okay? Thank you. So in essence, tutoring is designed to do these things. And like I say, it's all about encouraging, enabling, facilitating. It's about helping the learner to develop the skills and strategies and the independence to achieve through doing these various things. Okay. Lovely. And I think it's also important just to look at the responsibilities. Now, as I've said, the role itself will differ across the sector in different organisations, but having said that, these are the essential things that we should be responsible for in our roles. And significantly in this, it's looking at learners' starting points, capturing those starting points, enabling them to develop, to improve, to reflect on behaviour, to develop personal skills. But also we need to be aware that we need to be capturing those and measuring those. All of these things, all of these responsibilities need to be done within the boundaries of the role, and the boundaries are really significant. Okay, Marek, thank you. Okay.
So
need
one question that just came through at this stage already, and it might be one we maybe want to park for a little bit, but shall I just pop it to you?
Yeah.
Basically, it's looking at Ofsted, so
Yes.
we'll pop it in there. It was what are Ofsted looking for in terms of tutorials? What are the themes from recent inspections? That was the question that had come through. So it might be something that you want to briefly touch on, or you might want to park.
No. While it's I mean, we are looking at the common inspection framework a little bit, but while it's there, I'll just say that it's a really disparate picture out there in terms of inspection at the moment. I'm getting some colleges that are reporting a lot of focus on one-to-ones, a lot of observations on one-to-ones, whereas other colleges are saying they've not been seeing a lot, but there's been a lot of auditing around ILPs, particularly electronic ILPs. Target setting is a key aspect of what they're looking at, but it's all about focusing on, can you say that the experience that they've had has impacted on that learner's progression, and how can you show that? And how do you know that each individual learner has progressed appropriately for them from their starting point? I'm not sure if that answers the question fully. I've lost you, Marek. I can't hear you, sorry.
I'd muted myself, sorry about that, yeah.
Oh.
So that's typical, isn't it? Yeah, I'll do it by mine next time. But Kerry, I don't know, does that answer your question? Does it help any? Again, just feel free to use the chat facility there. I had got another couple of questions. This is what obviously sometimes starts to occur, but it's nice because it gets the dialogue going as we go.
Yeah, that's fine.
There was another point that came through, was about from John, and he was saying, what happens when the learner won't engage in these processes? It can become a tick box process for staff and learners. How is that viewed by Ofsted?
How long have you got?
I know. I was thinking we're already 12 minutes in and we've got the one. But
yeah, it's a doozy of a question, but it's one that's raised all the time. In essence, the key to all of this is a good learning conversation. What we need to be doing is ensuring that through our one-to-one reviews, we're asking questions, we're encouraging the learner to think, we're encouraging the learner to answer. And sometimes it's just a matter of being patient. Are we all right there? Sometimes it's just a matter of being patient and giving people time to work through. And I know because we've got these limits, we've got these, sort of 10 or 15 minute slots that we're supposed to race through all this stuff. It's about having a conversation and drawing out of that conversation what's essential to that learner at that time. Does that answer John's question?
Yeah, John, any thoughts on that one there as well? and Kerry. I think there was a little bit of feedback from Kerry here as well.
Yeah.
I think this is a question for everyone as well, and some of the other participants. And I say I'll put this to you now, and we can carry on with the session
Okay.
as we go along. But it's you know, how are other colleges documenting soft skills? You know, this is an area our matrix assessment noted we could develop. And she says, you know, thanks for the Ofsted responses; they were very helpful.
Oh, that's good. In terms of capturing starting points, it really depends. Obviously, it depends on the level of learners. So you can get anything from foundation learners. You'll do some diagrammatical stuff. You'll do pictures and draw out through questions what their starting points are. There's a lot of scaling going on at the moment. So getting learners to self-assess at different periods throughout the year, so they'll rate themselves on a whole range of behaviours, confidences in doing certain things, skills or academic confidences, and from all of that, then if they self-assess at different points throughout the year, then what they'll get is a measure of their progress. I mean, sometimes it can be alarming when they seem to have dipped back, so they can be less when they look to be moving forward, but in actual fact that's because they're reflecting better and they're acknowledging where their gaps are. So there's a whole range of things being done, but it tends to, on the whole, it tends to be ratings, you know, different methods of using ratings.
And I think from some colleagues over Grimsby Way,
Yeah.
saying in respect to what's just been said, does this mean that the IAG will increase in importance?
Again, I'm getting some strange messages through about IAG. There are some colleges that are not actually they're not referring on for IAG. Tutors are doing it. So I'm a little bit confused myself, to be honest, at what the picture is there at the moment. My understanding has always been that for IAG, if we're talking about initial advice and guidance, or is it just support and guidance? I better just be clear on that. Do we know?
Let's see. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Nikki? Was that is it with one or the other there? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with some of the questions that were coming through there as well. We've got some good ones coming up already. Yeah, some that I didn't
It's
expect.
scary stuff.
No, but you know it's going very well. So yeah, Nikki, if you want to get back with any thoughts on that, because we're getting some other thoughts as well about and some other questions.
If I can just stick with that one at the moment, that one about the support and the guidance, I think this slide that's up at the moment is really significant because again it's all about within the boundaries of your role as a tutor. So you know, we have to be careful that we're not dipping into giving advice where we don't have the expertise or the skills to do that. So we need to be very mindful of we're not careers advice and guidance people, for example, necessarily. So it's about, you know, like we're not counsellors either, so we need to work within those boundaries of the skills that we have.
Nikki has come back and suggested it was support and guidance rather than initial IAG.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's the most useful thing to say. There is a lot more focus on ensuring that at-risk learners are identified, that they're tracked appropriately. There's a lot more focus on sort of stories and scenarios that illustrate the impact of the support that's been put in place.
There's been a couple of...
I hope that helps.
Yeah, hopefully that helps there, Nikki. I think there's been a couple of suggestions as well about actual programmes that some have actually been used, that some have been, yeah. Thanks for that, Nikki. Thanks, Sally. Yeah, Cell Smart. I've really shared some of the questions and thoughts, Sally, that have been coming through as well with some of the others. Just in terms of some of the packages or programs or software that's been used as well. So I thought rather than, you know, we we completely discuss all that at this moment. I just share some of that with some of the participants as well, and it's something that we can come back to at the end and have a little look at.
Lovely.
So, as I say, we have had a few more questions, and I don't want to lose your track too much there.
No worries.
Let me just have a look there if there were any other thoughts. Shweta was saying, or is it target setting is key, and measuring progress through them is what we found at City.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Anyway,
thanks for that.
we can get moving. Kerry, currently exploring how vital it is that students set targets in one-to-one tutorials. Student feedback has noted some students like the discussion and don't value the target setting.
Yeah.
So thanks for the points about measuring soft skills, and that's from Bedford College.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, target setting's another whole ball game. We can do a full session on target setting.
But it all gives you plenty of food for thought as well. But this is great. Thanks everyone so far for your participation. Keep the questions and thoughts coming as well, because as I say, it's shaping this discussion and future discussions as well. So hopefully we'll get a chance to get through everything. So I'll let you carry on there again now, Sally.
Okay, so shall we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, please do. Oh, sorry.
That's you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we've just taken a little look at what the role is, what it consists of, what the boundaries are, and you know, importantly, like I said, we need to ensure that we're working within those boundaries of our skills, of the role as it's set out within the organisation. So if we just consider for a moment the fact that it has a value, and I think we need to raise awareness of this value. I mean, those of us that are involved in it as practitioners or managing tutorial provision will be well aware of the impact and the feedback that we get from students, but I think we need to spread that message a little bit further. And these are the aspects where it particularly contributes. And somebody mentioned earlier about the common inspection framework. So if we go on to the next slide, we can just take a little look at this. So just very briefly, this is the common inspection framework as of September 2015, and you'll be aware of the new judgment, personal development, behaviour and welfare. And you would imagine that tutorial sits within that very strongly, and you'd be right in thinking so. But I think it's really important to note that it also impacts on leadership management and quality of teaching, learning and assessment. So we're just going to have a little look now at those first three judgments and just highlight a couple of areas. If we can go on to the next slide, Mary, that'd be grand. So quality teaching, learning and assessment, we can see here where there are alliances with tutorial, where what we do in our one-to-one reviews feeds in. So high expectations, we're looking at stretch and challenge in our target setting. We're looking at identifying support needs and ensuring that they get appropriate referrals and that they take up that support. Ensuring that they're improving as a result of feedback. We're looking at encouraging learners' reflection and effective target setting there, and then engaging with others to ensure our learners are supported and progress. Okay, so then if we look at personal development, behaviour and welfare, which is the next slide, as you would imagine, we're looking at holistic development here, and one of the key things that's coming out of Common Inspection Framework and inspection is academic progress is not enough. It's all about developing the whole person, independent learning skills, employability skills, and this whole thing that we've already mentioned about starting points, capturing and measuring progress.
Can I just come in for a minute, please? Speech here.
Yes. Hi.
Sorry, I'm a bit late. We had a phone call from a college that needed to be dealt with. But one of the things I just want to add to that, Sally, is also the role of the tutor in preparing young learners for the work, and then also, you know, looking at what the result of the work placement was and how that's helped them in terms of personal development, in terms of confidence, etc. So I think it's always important that the tutors are involved in not only planning but also in dealing with the feedback and the learning that's taken place on the work placements.
Absolutely, and this can be a particular concern on a number of levels. You know, learners often don't know who they need to be talking to about their progress or about issues that they have. Should it be the employer? Should it be, you know, somebody in the workplace, or should it be the college? We have all sorts of tensions going on there, I think, for the learner, and we need to be really clear about how they can be supported and how tutors can ensure that they're providing the right guidance that's also going to support them in the workplace and their specific role there. So yeah, there are a whole other set of issues with work-based learning, because a lot of assessors are going in as tutors and finding it really difficult to find that balance. So in all honesty, Bij, I think there's a great deal of work to be done around tutoring in work-based learning.
Yeah, thanks for that.
An interesting question from Nikki as well, was suggesting, can you give some indication how the role of personal tutor impacts on the distance learning script markers who are assessing learners on a one-to-one basis?
Sorry, Marek, can you repeat that for me? Sorry.
No problem at all. Can you give some or any indication of how the role of personal tutor impacts on distance learning script markers who are assessing learners on a one-to-one basis?
Wow, that's a question, isn't it? Are we assuming that they're actually having a dialogue with the learners, or is it purely through sort of written feedback?
Good point there. Nikki, any further to that? Any answers to that one?
I mean, if I can come in, I think while we're waiting for Nikki, I think that's a key issue, particularly for learners who have large components of online learning or distance learning or blended learning, where I think it would certainly be critical that the script markers are not just looking at the responses that might be made in some kind of online test. Or does that show? What does it mean for the learner? How can the tutor be involved in addressing maybe some of the issues that those responses might produce, or those assessments might produce? So I would think it's critical that there is a connection between the two, and certainly that would be a strength that we would say as part of the learning curve approach, is that there's a strong relationship between the individual tutor that supports the learner and obviously what the learner's doing on in the distance learning programs.
Yes. Yes, I mean, the essence of tutoring, I've always felt, is in that dialogue, that understanding. Sorry, Marek, I've got something on my screen. Is it me or is it you?
It's me. There's all sorts going on.
Oh, that's all right.
It's an update.
I was panicking a bit there because I didn't know if it was something from my computer that was playing up. Sorry about that.
No, it's mine.
No, so for me, it's always been about the dialogue and being able to draw out of that conversation a learner's understanding and acknowledgement of progress. So if that's not happening, there has to be some other form of sort of written conversation, because feedback in itself, as you know, it only goes so far. So in terms of measuring that impact, I would find that very hard to do if all you're doing is feeding back on what's being submitted.
Nikki had added to it that it was mostly written feedback, but often including some telephone tutorial and professional discussion.
Fabulous, because that's where you get the richness out of that feedback, isn't it, and that acknowledgement of understanding.
There's a good one from Kerry here as well. There's always comes back to the maths and English as well, doesn't it, as well? So
Yeah.
Attendance at
Not my strongest point, I have to admit.
Oh, no problem at all. I say it's attendance at GCSE maths and or English, a real part of discussion within tutorials with students about why they are not attending. You know, any top tips for dealing with this effectively in tutorials?
None that I can pull out of my hat at the moment, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
It really is difficult because at the end of the day we can say how important these things are, and you know, we might know it and believe it ourselves, but it's about them being able to reveal to themselves that it's important to them by linking it up with things that they want out of their time at college. So it's about having a conversation around, well, if you don't do it, what will be the outcomes of that? And is that really going to help you, or can you manage without it? So it's about having this whole conversation around not necessarily why they don't want to do it, because it's usually because they don't like it. It's more than that. It's about having a conversation around the benefits of it in terms of what they want to achieve in the longer term.
Yeah, now Sally, I would certainly add one thing that we did a webinar on this last week, didn't we, Marek, with Sue Martin? And I think it's about engagement at different levels, and I totally agree. We've got to be able to sell the positives, we've got to overcome some of the negatives, and also it's just establishing a more positive mindset, which, as you said, you know, earlier, is a key element in developing that relationship and in developing the confidence in the learner. So again, if anyone wants to Marek, could you arrange possibly to provide that webinar recording from last week for anyone that's interested in how to improve English and maths?
Absolutely, and as well as that, along with Sally's webinar, it also fits in with one we've recently ran with Bob Craig as well, that touched on some of these and some of the tips involved in this as well, Kerry, and indeed all the other participants. So what we'll do is we'll make sure when we distribute this one, we'll send through the last two webinars that we mentioned as well there, because it has got some tips in it, and I think they all work quite nicely together as well there. So hopefully that go to answering some way to answering some of those questions and give some thoughts and ideas on how we can start to look at it beyond this session and other sessions as well. But there was another question that came through, and thanks for that really good answer as well there, Sally. Is how do schools get away with the IGCSE? It counts as a C, but after testing we are placing them on level 1 courses seen as below their ability.
I think that's one for Beej.
Yeah. I'll pick that one up at the very end, John, if we just allow Sally to continue with her presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there's some others that have come up around there in terms of, and some of the thoughts around the maths and English as well, as Julie's just suggesting here. Link up the value of maths and English to long-term goals, have clear consequences for not attending maths and English. You know, it's a condition of funding.
Yeah, it's a minefield, isn't it? And I'm afraid not my expertise. So if I work within my own boundaries, I'm afraid it's not a particular area that I can give too much good advice on. But I'm sure, you know, Beej can inform people on that one. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Between us, and then Steve, are there any good examples of a review process that incorporates these softer skills? Functional skills, work-related experience, and course content-specific feedback? I don't think that this is something we capture detailed enough.
Okay, I have prepared something that I'm actually doing for one of the additional webinars. So I'm preparing something at the moment that will give guidance on exactly what to look for and how to take people through the 4 stages of the review process, from preparing for it right to reflecting on it, and it should all incorporate into that. If that's helpful, I can send that out prior to that webinar.
Steve, if that's of any use to you, just let us know. And then one final point, little one from Denise there, in saying it's all about attitudes, which is an important starting point for tutorials and for English and maths. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, Yeah, a lot of work being done on mindsets at the moment, isn't there? And there's some really useful stuff to draw on there in terms of engaging the learners in that tutoring conversation. So yes.
Super.
Right then, shall we move on to the
Yeah.
next one?
Brilliant. Let me just get you the next slide up there again. Thank you very much.
I thought people were going to be gentle with me today, but we're doing all right.
Yeah, you know, you're doing fantastic, Blake. You know, there's been some fantastic questions coming through there. But please do keep them coming, and
Absolutely.
you get on with it there, then Sally as well.
Okay. So just going back to this thing about tutoring does feed into all aspects of the Common Inspection Framework, and you know, you might not think that it directly impacts on effectiveness of leadership management, but the feedback that we get from learners in those one-to-one conversations is really important information, and quite often there's a danger that we sit on that, we don't do anything with it. So it's really important to capture that information, to identify where there are themes coming through from groups of students, for instance, and being able to use that and pass that on to inform improvements. And also in terms of narrowing gaps in achievement, it's the whole process of tracking those learners and encouraging them to reflect and enabling them to get the support that they need in order to progress. So we do feed into all of these aspects of effective leadership management, and I think it's just really significant to be able to say that, you know, tutoring as a whole can impact on all these aspects, and to be able to raise the value of it. Are we okay with that, Marek? Because I've lost you.
That's fine. I just popped the cam off there just because I was just noticed that there was a little bit of interference on bandwidth.
All right, no worries.
I'm
No
still
worries.
here.
Okay. As long as you've not abandoned me, that's great. Okay, shall we move on to the next slide then? We're going to just have a little look now at the National Occupational Standards. So we've had a look at the role, we know what it should do, we know a little bit about how it can impact, its value that it has. So if we take a look now at the standards, and then we'll see how they can be used to further improve practice. The National Occupational Standards were developed, essentially the rationale behind it was to raise the profile of tutoring and to create better retention and achievement through good tutoring. There was clarity of the role needed because it was very different, it's very disparate across the sector, and when you tried to have conversations about it, it was really difficult because everybody understood it in a different way. So it was about bringing that clarity so that then we could say, so this is what good can look like, and we can also identify the support and the CPD that people need to be able to do that job well. And then the outcome of all of that is bringing it in line with professional occupations such as mentoring, coaching and counselling. So for me, driving this forward was really important in getting people to talk about tutoring and to acknowledge that it is a skilled activity that we need to invest in. Okay, next one, Marek, please. So we'll just consider now what the occupational standards are. They describe what a person needs to do, know and understand, and when you read them, I mean, hopefully you've had an opportunity to download them from the website, from FETN, but you can go on after and have a look if you haven't already got them. They are free to download there. But it's really important to note when you're reading them, because they're written in a way that says what you need to do and this is what you need to know and understand. They're not a qualification, and there is a danger to lapse into thinking that that's what they are because they're written in that way. So just please be aware that they're not a qualification, they are standards that we aspire to fulfill. It's also important just to recognise that the occupational standards were developed with a range of circumstances and contexts in mind. So we had higher education involved as well as FE, work-based learning. So it covers the whole spectrum of the sector and across the 4 nations of the UK. So they are representative of tutoring across the sector and the UK. Should we go on to the next slide? And just some useful examples of how the NOS can be applied. And I've seen examples of this using it as a self-assessment tool. A means of recognising and describing personal achievements is really important, and identifying CPD. An associated career progression as well, and we are starting down that road. We've now got the level 3 certificate in personal tutoring available through Ascentis, so we are starting to raise that professional profile as well. Managers can use it to describe the skills that are required, really good for job descriptions and so forth, using for appraisals, and also in looking at benchmarking exercises, observing one-to-ones. So they are a useful thing to use, and you can, because they are just standards, you can adapt them to apply to the way that you work in your own organisations, but they are useful benchmarks. Okay, Marek, on to the next.
Sally, just before you move on,
Yeah.
can I just check, who owns the National Occupational Standards? You say they can be adapted by different users, but are they in the same way that we would be thinking about occupational standards that underpinned an NVQ or an apprenticeship?
Yeah, maybe it's the terminology that I've used, Beach. Rather than adapted, I should have said applied. That makes more sense.
Yeah,
they are National Occupational Standards. They are UK CES approved, so they've gone through all that process. And yeah, the standards remain as they are. Thank you. It's the application of them. Thanks for that clarification. Okay.
Brilliant.
That was question.
Super. Yeah, there was a couple of the participants who were asking that same question actually there as well. But some of the thoughts and feedback saying, yeah, this would be super as a benchmark for TNA as well. Thanks for that, Steve. And Jackie's just mentioned that, that she's read the NOS. Excellent document. So there you go. Super. Excellent.
Great stuff, great. So the next slide just captures the main headings for those of you that may not have already seen the standards. And you can recognise here some of the things that we've been talking about, that identification of support, developing learner autonomy, personal skills, social skills development. And all of the standards will break these down so that people can understand what it is that they're trying to do and how they can do that, and the skills that they need to be able to do it. Okay, on to the next one. So this is a kind of an over to you, a little self-reflection, and you can consider these questions either in your own practice as a tutor or on behalf of your teams, and consider how your teams work in relation to these questions. I'll just give you a moment to take a look at these. Any thoughts on where you are with these?
Sally, one reflection, because obviously in the inspection framework we also look at outcomes for learners and students.
Yes.
I think you can see how a lot of the things you're talking about provide some of those, if you want, evidence of the learning, whether it be the fact that they attend better, whether the self-awareness increases, as well as the more obvious metrics like them passing qualifications and progressing. So I think there's many ways in which, I think that we can assert that how well we're doing, as you said, by not only looking at where that we practice and what we do, but also in those impacts that we're having. And I think the more metrics that we have in terms of harder and softer, the better. And I think that's very important, not only for inspection. I think it's for just, you know, the quality of experience that your learners have. So it's not just about Ofsted; it's about a much broader set of agendas there. So I welcome that question. I think it's a very good question.
Yeah, and I really support what you say, Beej, about it not being all about Ofsted, because, you know, when I'm working with colleges, my advice is you do what you need to do for your learners, because every organisation will be different and have a different mix of learners with different needs, and it's about ensuring that you meet their needs for them to progress well. And if you do all of that and you put that support in place and you encourage their independence, then by doing so you can track back to the common inspection framework. So the framework should never come first. It should be the learners that come first, and building your provision around that, and then you can map that back to the inspection framework.
Yeah. I think another thought comes to mind. There's a question that I've picked up, and that is apprentices. That's both on the job and off the job, because again, on the job, it's often the workplace supervisor, their boss, you know, the owner of the business, that's actually supporting them. And again, I think many of the things you've talked about, they might be called a coach, they might be called a super trainer, but you know, they see those people on a daily basis at work, and how well do they understand their role in terms of supporting them, gauging their progress, giving them feedback, supporting them, and obviously in many cases, you know, it's sometimes not giving them the feedback they want to hear. So you know that's quite an important set of issues there. It's that challenge and support role, isn't it, Sally?
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. It's all about getting the learner to reflect on their progress, their behaviour, their performance, getting them to acknowledge where they might need to improve, and then encouraging them to identify ways that they can do that. So it is all about them, and that's why I come back to tutoring needs a specific set of skills to be able to have that conversation and draw that out of the learners in order to work with them. And like you say, in work-based learning, where it's somebody within the workplace that might not have any kind of you know, working in education experience, all of this will be new to them. So I think there needs to be a lot more educating of people that are doing that role in the workplace, and colleges working more closely to prepare these people to do that where they are taking on apprentices.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I think no, I was just going to say the final slide is just saying about what FETN can provide in terms of support. You know, some free resources and guidance. I'm always on the end of the telephone if anybody needs to have a chat. So that there is all that available. I think it's also important, you know, just to understand that that qualification is out there for those that want to progress, you know, with tutoring as a professional activity, and to be able to be qualified in that role. That level 3 qualification is out there through Ascentis to be able to do that. And I just urge people really to share their understanding of the value of tutoring and the importance of getting well qualified, well experienced and well skilled tutors, because good tutoring is really powerful, but poor tutoring can have really negative impacts, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to do the best for our learners. So good tutoring is the way to go for me. So.
Absolutely. Just before I tried to butt in, I think Julie was just almost preempting that, actually. by suggesting that they've actually done some of the their personal tutors have actually already done some of the packages, and then actually everything's just scrolled down my screen from it typically. And yeah, they've done the package on the standards and the provider, and they're currently doing their level 3 qualification. The staff are benefiting most from meeting together and discussing the practice, which
Absolutely
led on to that there. There's just another little thought there from John. It's about learner experience is paramount to all, but how well we record and track is measured by Ofsted. It's still evidence-based, but this is inconsistent at inspection.
it's really difficult because, you know, inspectors are human beings like everybody else, although sometimes people wonder. But the problem is that they come with their own ideas of what tutoring is about, and I think quite often they lay that on top of what they're seeing. And, you know, if inspectors don't truly understand what the role of the tutor is, it's really difficult then for them to make the judgments. So it's all about impact. And I know that there's been a lot more learning walks going on. They don't seem to always ask for a lot of written evidence, but stories of impact and intervention are really important. If you can draw together case studies that evidence how learners' issues were identified, for example, what was done about it, what the impact was, and how they progressed as a result of it, that kind of thing is really useful.
Yeah,
they will go on and audit the ILPs, the online ILPs, for example, and look at target setting and how useful those targets are. Because, you know, target setting is a real issue, and they are homing in on it because it's become a process that people go through, but it's not necessarily they've got hung up on SMART and forgotten what meaningful is all about. So we need to kind of revisit all of that and maybe use some different language.
Absolutely. And again, as it's happened again there, just as you started to talk about that, Steve was just sending his note to me there about negative impact being recorded and about the effects can be devastating and must be addressed by centres. So yeah, that was good timing, that one, wasn't it, Steve? And Sally with that one again. Some other thoughts that were coming through there as well. Kerry again. Thanks, Kerry. You know, e-learning within tutorials is something we are exploring as part of the tutorial provision. Any points on how other colleges and providers have done this would be really helpful. So if anyone's got any other thoughts as well, I mean, this is something, again, if there's any thoughts and feedback, we can start to share this beyond this session as well, can't we?
Yeah, if I can just say that Doncaster College have developed their own series of online training for tutorial to cover a lot of the group tutorial stuff, and it appears that Ofsted quite liked what they'd done. Now they're going to be at the conference in November doing a workshop on that, so if anybody's particularly interested, they might be able to get some idea of what it was that they particularly liked about their process. But they did dig very deep into, all right, so it's online, and that means for, you know, majority of people it's accessible and you can track that they're doing it, but how do you track the impact? But because they have little tests and they were measuring the understanding through those tests at the end of each one, Ofsted were quite happy with that.
One of the things also, just to add to that, if you look through some of the inspection reports, the two issues came up constantly. One, as you said, Sally, was that do you actually measure the impacts to see how effective your tutorials are and all the other support mechanisms you've got, and to use just simple metrics, whether it's the attendance being better, attendance at the core, the attendance in English and maths, as well as the progress in learning in terms of, you know, being set more challenging targets that are came out was that this has to be consistent, and I think that's what's often the case. You have some brilliant practice in one part of the organisation, go over to another, and it's less good, it's not consistent, there isn't the same buy-in, for example, the worrying bit. And I know one of you said, well, if we put learners first, Ofsted should follow, but that isn't always being consistently applied. You know, you might put the learners first and you might have excellent support for them, but in other parts of your organisation that might not happen, and that is what we get. That's what we get constantly caught out on, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, I agree with that. It's that parity of provision across the organisation that tends to fall.
And the students tell you, because if the
Yes.
inspectors, you know, go into the canteen and have a little cup of tea with the students, they'll soon tell them about where practice is not consistent, or they don't feel supported, or they don't get set meaningful targets, or they get set targets and no one reviews them. It's even worse.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the worrying thing for me is the amount of organisations that are still setting targets for the students, you know, and this is something else that we need to really be moving away from, because if we're automatically setting targets for them, they're not going to take ownership, and the impact is not going to be impact that they necessarily need. So we need to be aware that it's a shared responsibility, and to be able to engage in that conversation so that those relevant targets arise out of the conversation.
Yep, that's super. Getting some good thoughts and feedback actually coming as well, which is always appreciated. And I'll just point out as well to Christine and I think it was John. We'll make sure that you get all the information that you've requested there as well from Sally, and indeed anybody else who'd like any further information on that. Plus, you'll all be getting a copy, as you might have missed me say earlier on, of the video recording and the slides, and some nice thoughts from Julie and Shweta there. In respect of how they've been looking at it within their organisations, in respect of, say for example, having open group tutorials on an open Moodle page. Each aspect has a follow-up activity, and there's also another provider there with Shweta and the team at City in Islington have created some e-learning modules on radicalisation, British value safeguarding, and the like there. Over there, and we've we've also got some other friends in GFG who created the Impact software as well, which some of you may be familiar with. So there's some good approaches there.
Brilliant. Well, that's kind of my bit done, Marek. I don't know if there's any more questions from anybody, or
yeah, are there any questions that I've missed out on there, because I'm just conscious that if I have missed anything, then please let us know, and certainly if it comes back to you, after the session, just put it to us, and I'm sure Sally will be happy to help there. But again, the feedback has been really good. Thanks for that, Denise, and great interaction. Sally, you're getting some praise for your first webinar here. That's
oh, thank you very much.
It did feel like you were really thrown into it as well at one point when the questions started coming. You worry at the beginning, are we going to get any interactions and questions? And then there's plenty there. And Shweta, if that's if it's okay with you, there is a couple of providers who are potentially interested to have a chat to see how you were doing things as well there. So just let us know if that's okay, and we can put you in touch with each other, which is always nice. Yeah, thanks for the feedback there, Nikki, as well. Thanks for that, John, Julie, Carol. Oh, there's some suggestions. It's just like you were actually there as well.
Well, I think that's the useful thing, is that by keeping our, as Marek said at the beginning, keeping our webinars with a smaller group of people, it's a little bit more intimate, and it allows presenters such as Sally to obviously answer questions. It gives you the opportunity. So thanks very much, Sally, for your first webinar, and
pleasure. Thank you.
and it certainly shows the value of having a moderator in the form of Marek or myself here. Just one little comment, by the way, just because we had a question about the GCSEs, English and Maths. I think it's important to, the condition of funding obviously is a clear driver for a lot of our behaviours in terms of obviously funding. I think though that ultimately the individual learner, if they're being assessed initially and then there's a rigorous diagnostic assessment, sometimes we do find that even though they might have got a grade D, it would be very difficult for them to progress to the grade C. And I think the key thing here is, although that is expected to always lead to a resit, is that if you've got the evidence, and particularly if it's rigorous, then on occasions I think it's worth having a discussion about what point that person will be best entered for a resit, and maybe to give them the confidence of doing maybe a stepping, not recording it on the ILR or the school census data. In other words, give them the confidence of doing something that's a bit different as a what I'd call an internal stepping stone, and then obviously have them do the GCSE resit at the appropriate point, which might be, you know, later on in the year, or it might be, if they're in a 2-year program, it might be something that they study for 2 years but are not actually entered for the exam until the 2nd year. The only problem with the IGCSE, or what we call the legacy GCSEs, which is the old GCSEs, is that although they've been extended by another year, so in effect you can offer them up until the end of 16-17, is that it's going to be difficult if the person's on a 2-year program that goes beyond 2017. So just be wary of that. And I know that question was raised earlier, and certainly we'll come back to that at another time. So thanks very much for the question, and thanks, Sally, for handing it over to me to look at.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure. And I think the only other thing just to note is, if again, just from the learning curve point of view, if any of you have not looked at Learning at College, have a look at Learning at College and our materials, the online materials that will support your tutorial and enrichment programs. Thanks very much then. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Beej.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Marek. And thanks to all the people that participated.
Yeah, some great feedback there, as I say. I will pass it all on to you there, Sally, from everyone. And you know, thanks for that feedback. And we even had say, for example, Mark, who was attending his first webinar today as well. So
congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 2 of you, one delivering and one actually attending as well. So that's super. And as you're all asking there, we certainly will make sure that there will be more of these, and Sally will most definitely be back with more. I like some of the feedback which is coming in saying that it was just like you were actually there. So you know, we're in some ways trying to replicate some of that as well. So you know, we can be in more than one place at once at a time. And as I say, we're recording everything. We're making sure you all get access. Yeah, as I say now, as that was Mark's first webinar, he'll be expecting this standard every time. The pressure is on. Thanks for that, Denise. Now, put a load of pressure on Sally. Rohit, what I'll do is I'll put you in touch with Sally, if that's okay, because I know you've got a couple of other really good questions there that it might be worth just communicating that with Sally directly, because I know that's something that she's been involved with. So, Sally, I'll make sure you get all this information from me as well. So I'm going to turn the recording off.
Thank you.
Hey, no problem at all. I'm going to turn the recording off now anyway as well, so if there are any further thoughts, feel free to put them to us. If I can remember.
Can I just thank everybody for taking part and for making it so comfortable for me. That's been grand. I hope you've got something out of it today that'll be useful in your roles, and I hope you'll join us for some more.